Hey guys, Rog here. In this video I'm going to show you how to draw these three styles of side view. So these are styles that I like to draw. Obviously there's many more out there, but these are the ones I'm familiar with. So grab some pen and paper or load up Photoshop and let's get right into it. So we're going to start with the head on the left, which is sort of a semi-realistic style. Still very much anime influenced, but more realistic than the other two. And I'm going to start this with a regular circle. I think that's the way most people start ahead. If you're just drawing faces and you're just trying to learn how to draw them, I think starting from a circle is a great way to do it. But if you're drawing a full body character, it's not always advisable to start with the head. I think there's better ways to do that. I'd like to cover that in a future video. But if you're just practicing and want to get the shapes and the forms down, definitely just start with a circle. It's the way I think most tutorials will tell you to start. So I'll point out a few things here. I've already roughed in a bit of the face. So the things I'm keeping in mind here is the nose, at the bridge of the nose, the face kind of dips in here. So as the circle comes down and begins to curve inward, I want that to be the point where the nose begins to curve off. It's also going to be where we place the eyes, because this will put the eye at the halfway point between the top of the head and the bottom of the chin. So let's play a little further. So you can see here, I'll actually back up. Before I draw these lips in, I've drawn a line that's going to go from the tip of the nose down to where I'm going to put the chin. This is important because the lips come out and touch this line and then go back, and come out and touch this line and go back. So there's some subtlety to the curves that we're going to put in there, but you want to make sure that the lips come out and touch that line, and this will place the upper lip farther forward than the bottom lip, and that just looks more natural. Not all characters may have that, but as you can kind of see on the left, that just looks right. And as I'm drawing this, I'm not really looking at this the one on the left. I'm just kind of drawing it from memory here. So I'm cleaning up some of the construction lines. So the things you want to look for are, you want this point where this inflection happens to be about the center between the top of the head and the chin. The nose, like the tip of the nose or the bottom nose, is going to be about 1/3 down between the center line and the chin. And the mouth is another 1/3 down. So these are thirds. Third to the nose. And you could put another line there for the tip of the nose. Third down, third down, third down. And that's going to give you just about the right proportions. Let's keep going. The head doesn't tend to be so round in the front. It does tend to like slope back. So I kind of got rid of the roundness there. I just think that looks more natural, as you can see here. It makes it look like the character doesn't have such a big forehead. So the key with this style is you want to keep the nose fairly small and realistic sized. So it slopes down at a fairly steep angle. There's a little bulge here at the tip of the nose. It comes back to the face. The lips curve out, curve down. Just sort of pay attention to how your lines look. The curvature of your lines are what give it form. So if the curves are not going in the right directions, they give you the wrong impression of what the structure looks like. So what I've done across this face profile is the line curves in for the nose. It bumps out ever so slightly to give the nose some extra 3D shape there. Curves down. Oops. Curves down. Curves out. Curves in. Curves out. Curves in. Curves out. Curves in. And that kind of is the shape you want. It's doing switchbacks the whole way. But the distance of each switchback relative to the others is what gives it the feeling that it's drawn correctly or that it looks good. The mouth I've just indicated with a line. The mouth from the side view does tend to slope down a little bit, and generally keeping this fairly short tends to look good, especially for female characters or just characters that you want to have an appealing look. I'm just erasing some of the construction lines here. It's okay if your stuff looks rough and doesn't look perfect right away, because drawing is sort of an iterative process. My technique is generally to zoom out and draw where I can see everything at once, and then go in and refine it afterwards. Because when you're zoomed in, it's easy to lose sense of scale and proportions. I think most of that comes from pencil drawing. I tend to draw very small, and because I like to be able to see the whole piece at once. It's much easier to tell if you've got something wrong when you can see the whole thing. So roughing in a few other spots here. The top of the ear should line up, if the character is not skewed in any way, should line up with the top of with the eyeball to the base of the ear where the ear breaks away. And then the bottom of the ear should be lined up with the tip of the nose. I tend to draw this line pretty straight, the jawline. If it curves too much, it does kind of give it a different style. I like to keep that kind of sharp. I think that looks better that way, but however you want to draw it, it's up to you. You'll see the other styles are a little different. Just adding in some features of the eye. The iris becomes fairly flat, especially if the character's looking forward. You don't tend to see a whole rounded eye. That would kind of give you the impression that the eye is staring at you, like the character is looking straight at you, but because you're viewing the eye from the side, it should be in perspective. I just like to add little details here, like some little shading on the nose, and I'll add a little bit around the eye and stuff. I think that just kind of adds to it. It doesn't always look finished when it's just the outer lines. I had unfortunately recorded this once before, and I was like, that came out really good. And then I checked the audio, and for some reason the mic wasn't actually active. This is my second time. It's probably not going to be as good, but it's what it is. Enjoy watching this back. I hope you actually find it useful. Just tweak things as you go. If you're not happy with something, change it. Don't just say, well, it's close enough, or I don't know how to fix it. Just try and figure it out and get it as good as you can. It's fine if you do have to settle for something, but if you can fix it, try it again. If you know it looks wrong, you're halfway there. You just need to figure out why it looks wrong. And if you know why it looks wrong, then you should know how you can fix it. Certainly you have to get kind of used to the tools though. So this is a brush that I found that works. It's just got some opacity features that the darker I press, the more or the darker it gets. It kind of works more like a pencil, like multiple passes will darken it, and I'm able to sculpt it away as if I was using an eraser. I find that works really well, much more than, say, a solid black brush. So you can, with any brush, you can select this button right here that I'm hovering over. That will enable opacity if you have a tablet of any sort. If you don't have a tablet and you're thinking about getting one, I would certainly recommend it. Another way to do this is actually when I first started out, you can do a lot of really intricate and crisp, clean line work with the pen tool, just doing all kinds of vector shapes. So you can do it the easy way, which is you just draw vector paths for your lines, or you can go another step and you can do, it sounds super tedious, but you would do vector paths for the inside and outside of lines so you can vary their thickness and then fill in between them. And that's what I used to do for a long time. And you can get some really cool results that are absolutely crisp and clean and scalable. That's a lot of work. I think sort of mastering a brush tool and drawing in raster is way more efficient. Certainly you have to kind of get very used to the tool. Digital is really something I'm focusing on lately. I've always been a big pencil drawer. I've been drawing every day for the last 3 years or so in pencil, but I've really wanted to get better at digital lately, so I'm tinkering around with that a lot. If you want to use these brushes, most of these brushes come from a guy, Keenan Lafferty. He does YouTube videos as well, so he would be a great guy to follow. He offers his brushes on his Patreon. I think they're free, or at the very least they're like $1. I think they're free, but this is his chalk brush, and I've just come to love this brush because it's pretty awesome. I have some other ones too. I don't think I use any of them in this video though, so we'll ignore them for now. I really like how this one came out. It's a little more finished than the one on the right. We're not going to give these models any hair. We're going to probably do that in a future video. But this is one of my favorite styles. It's a good mix of realism and keeping some stylized influence. I just think it looks good. It's how I like to draw my characters. I use the other styles a little less. Give her some features here. Sorry, just keep the cursor on there. So these are where we're going to leave these two. Oh, sorry. So what I was doing there was I was using the liquify tool, and I apologize that didn't show up in the window screen. So I want to show you a cool trick here. This really applies to any kind of coloring or shading that you're doing in Photoshop where you have multiple layers. So something really cool you can do is obviously the liquify tool's incredibly powerful for nudging things into place and fixing small perspective things or whatever you want. It's a powerful tool. But the problem is it can only work on one active layer. So if you have a layer of, in this case, line art and shading, you can only do it on one or the other, and you can't like control select them both and liquify. It just doesn't work. So a cool trick you can do is to create a merged copy of those two layers, which will be temporary. You can do that by creating a new layer down here, and then do Control Alt Shift E. Control Alt Shift E. That makes a merged copy of all visible layers. At that point, you will nudge your, I think I have a pop-up here in a second. You'll do the liquify tool to your merged layers. That way you can see how you're affecting your shading and your lines all together. Yeah, so here. So when you're doing it for the first time, you go down here, you click liquify, you nudge your lines around, whatever, fix your anatomy. And then without going back into liquify or doing anything else, no, don't use any other filters. Now go to your other two lines, your other two layers, which is the lines and the shading independently, and select the top liquify. Don't go back into this liquify. Click this top liquify. That's going to apply the mesh transformation that it just used to your independent layers. So you'll have to click on, say, the line art, click on this liquify, click on the shading, click on this liquify. That will nudge the individual layers into the same position that the merged layer was in. And then you can delete the merged layer. So now you've modified your two standalone layers. You haven't had to merge them, but you're able to use the liquify tool. So that's incredibly helpful. And I'm just disabling to show that they're the same now. So that's a really good trick. I just read about it on Reddit the other day, and I've already used it a couple times. It is a pain if you have a lot of color layers, though. If you make big changes with liquify and you have to apply it to a bunch of color layers, it can be really tedious, but it's really the only way to do it if you want to keep your layers separate. So this is about going to do it for this face. compare yours. If you're working in Photoshop, you can rotate the canvas or flip the canvas 180. Flip just horizontal. It will make it so you can see your mistakes easier. So that's what I did here. I'm just flipping it back and forth. Because you get used to seeing it in one way, and the mistakes don't stand out at you right away. So let's do a little organizing here. Start on the second style. This one's a little bit more sort of cartoony, I guess. I'm going to start it the same way. Start with a circle. And I'm going to keep many of the same rules in mind here. I want like the bridge of the nose to be in the center of the face. I want the nose to roughly be 1/3 down, the mouth 1/3 down. Difference is I'm going to really stick this nose out. I want this whole front part of the face to kind of come out here in this style. Nose is much more exaggerated. It doesn't come down at a sharp angle. It really hooks right out. But you can see the subtlety of the line changes. So it curves out, curves down, curves out, curves in, curves out, curves in, curves down. And I started with that same line drawn from the tip of the nose to where I'm going to put the chin, which should be roughly a little less than the rest of the height up here in the circle, if you want like a guideline for how long that should be. And I just draw a simple mouth in here, just a line coming down from the top lip. Not exactly at the same angle, but pretty close. And then rough in the eye and just a few anatomical things. Indicate the nose. Again, I'm not looking so much at the one I've already drawn on the left. I'm just doing this from, just following the rules that I have in my head. What should this look like? You can see how the forehead looks really strong here. So I think I knocked that back a little bit. But it does kind of work in this style. I don't know, I just don't really like it when a character has that look to them. That's totally my preference. You're welcome to do whatever you want. I'm just making a few tweaks. I felt like the mouth was a little too close to the bottom of the chin, so the easiest thing to do is just move the chin down. Go the path of least resistance. So I backed out because I'm going to do the back of the head, and I kind of want to see the shape I'm drawing as a whole. So back out, get to a bigger brush, rough it out, and then we'll go in and we'll clean it up. Same rules apply for the ear. I have drawn a little bit high here looking at this, but I mean, a little bit off isn't too bad. Top of the, this point on the ear lined up with the eye. This one lined up with the nose. You can see the chin's a little bit more rounded here. I wanted to give this more of like a, a rounder face. The head is, mark this out here. Really, the head anatomy heads aren't totally round. So they would normally come back and almost egg shape backwards a little bit. It's probably exaggerating a little bit, but they get kind of flat on the top and then come back around and then meet up here right below the ear. And the ear can be in the center, roughly in the center of the, say, forehead to the back of the head, if you want to position it. I think a little bit farther back also works, but you don't want it to be too close because that just looks weird if you do that. Get these lines out of here. So I left the head pretty round right here, but I fixed that with a liquify tool. I just didn't want to, it's so easy to fix with liquify tool, I just didn't want to bother fixing it with sketch lines. I do follow a similar process when I pencil draw as well. It's very similar. You just sketch in lines lightly, go over them darker when you're more confident with them, and then do a finishing pass where you really clean everything up, make everything very dark. You can see once again we've kind of shrunk the eye down compared to a front face-on view. Try to keep it compact, try to keep the pupil compact. And a cool effect you can do is if you draw the pupil kind of like this, set backwards a little bit, it tends to look kind of good because the pupil is getting lensed, and it gives you sort of an impression of it being 3D and the character looking forward, as if this is the domed lens of the eye. Find the ear a little bit. I know you're an expert. I tend to just throw in a few lines that look okay. The one on the right is actually not all that far off from, say, like some realistic structure. In this case, since we're not anywhere near realistic proportions, we can just kind of get away with simplifying the ear down. Again, I like I like this style. Probably my second favorite. Just has kind of a fun look to it. You make some interesting characters, give them a lot of personality. It just looks good. So without changing brushes, using the same brush I was just using for line work, choosing a slightly lighter value, in this case like a dark gray, and then increasing the brush size and just marking a few spots to add some real quick shading. So thinking about some basic lighting that would come down from the top, like a shadow here above the eye, maybe a little shadow here, around the bottom of the eye too, on the nose, a bit here. Just to give some impression of shape and make it a little bit more visually interesting. Obviously, the inside of the ear is usually pretty dark. And we'll make her not totally bald. Give her some kind of buzz cut. I was thinking we can take these and give them hair in a future video. When I first started drawing, profile views were something I thought was very challenging until I started really practicing just the rules of, where should the eye sit and where should the nose be. And once you learn the proportions, it's not all that difficult. And you practice it enough and the lines become very natural to draw. I went back and colored the hair on the first one we did. Very first model has hair because I was just looking at some hairstyles. So that'll do it for that one. We'll go on to the third style here. This is a much more like almost young character look, I guess, or really simplified. Not a lot of relation to real anatomy other than some of the spacing between like the proportional distances. Start the same way though. We're going to start with a circle. And sometimes you can draw a face without starting with a circle, but it just gives you such a good repeatable point. You just get a feel for how you should like sculpt the face out of a circle. So same thing, I've got a very rounded line here. I'm actually not going to make the lip show out much at all. I'm just going to make this all one rounded arc. With a little bit of subtlety, we'll bump it out for, say, the top lip, but I'm not going to define the lower lip almost at all. when you really start skewing what the anatomy looks like, you get into a territory of like it's very easy to get stuff that doesn't look right because you're breaking the rules intentionally, but you have to do it in a way that looks good. So roughing in a few features here. I haven't gone in and cleaned up anything at this point. Just adjusting the height of the mouth and even redraw it. When you don't show the lips, I find it's a little more difficult to draw like a line just for a mouth. So I wanted to try and draw the mouth open in this case. Fix up her head. Did extend this line here. This kind of gives an impression of like there being some kind of upper lip. You might try that on yours. Very pointy chin here. You can make it a little more rounded like this one, or you could draw it pointy. It's not that critical. I did rotate the canvas here. I was really trying not to, but I had to give in. You know, when in your own drawing in Photoshop, I find rotating the canvas is extremely helpful. It's easier to draw lines in the natural motion of your wrist than to like pull towards the center of your hand or something. It's very hard to make smooth lines in the non-natural motions of your wrist. So normally when I'm drawing digitally, I'm flipping the canvas around all the time. If I'm doing line work stuff, usually. Give her some eyelashes. Otherwise the eye looks a little plain. I'm just shading in the top of the eye. There are all kinds of ear styles out there. You'll see, especially in like more, I don't want to say stylized because that doesn't really make sense, but more simplified animation styles. The ears are sometimes just this line, just that part, the part that gives you an indication that there's like some inner fold, and that's it. Make that a little bit more detail because it goes into shadow anyway. Probably in this style, though, it would be way more appropriate to leave that ear very simple. So these two styles don't look exactly the same yet, and I'm marking a spot here where I drew that line. I need this bottom part of the chin to kind of pull back a little bit and go down. So there, I just made it like if you were to compare those two. Not a major change, but really influences how it looks. I think the problem was the mouth. Mouth being open would mean that the bottom jaw drops, and it was just too close to the mouth. Just didn't make physical sense. Now a little quick shading in here again. Under the eye. Under the eye always looks good. I don't remember if I did that on the other two. That's a pretty big one. The eyelid does cast a shadow in here, so if you fill that in, it tends to immediately give your character more of a 3D feel. And to get these shadows fairly consistent, I'm not raising the tablet pen, because if you do, you'll start to get darker overlaps. I'm doing them all in one swipe and then going back and cutting them to the right shape with the eraser tool. So same thing up here. Oops. That's gonna just about do it for this style. All right, so let's pause it here. So you can kind of see on across all three styles, we're keeping the eye as sort of the baseline. It's roughly in the center of the head. So the realistic style, very much 1/3 down is the tip of the nose. So you can see that in both of these. The middle style, like slightly more stylized, the nose that pushed up a little bit, happens in both. And this one, it's almost even more so, or at least the same, in terms of being pushed up to kind of scrunch the face. Lips, another 1/3 down. Here, the whole mouth is about at 1/3, and on these two, I have it sloping down even more on the open mouth. And then the chin, another 1/3 down. This chin in both of these actually sticks down a little lower. I think that's just because we arced the whole jawline more. And this one, because it's a much smaller face in general, the chin is just a little bit higher up. So you can kind of tell. You can compare your own if you have them side by side. You can do the same thing. Pull up the ruler tool with Control R and drag from the ruler down, and you can add these lines to kind of check your own. And maybe if you have something that doesn't look right, it will uncover why it doesn't look right. So I think that's it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and in a future video we'll go over other face angles. I find that 3/4 is always really common one to draw, so we'll definitely go over that. We'll do some face-on views, and then we'll go back and we'll start doing some hair and adding some other details. So thank you all for watching, and take care. Bye.